My roommate kept stealing my food, so I let him eat exactly what he wanted. When I first moved into the apartment, everything seemed perfect. It was a small 2-bedroom place near my job. Nothing fancy but clean, affordable, and in a good location. The only catch was that I needed a roommate. That's how I ended up living with Matt. At first, Matt seemed like a great roommate. He was friendly, paid his rent on time, and said all the right things during the first week. "You don't have to worry about me," he told me. "I'm super respectful about shared spaces." That statement did not age well. For the first couple of weeks, everything was fine. We mostly stayed out of each other's way. I worked long hours, and Matt worked nights at a bar downtown, so our schedules barely overlapped. Occasionally we'd run into each other in the kitchen and have small talk. How was work? Busy? That kind of thing. Normal roommate stuff. The first weird thing happened with a frozen pizza. I had bought a couple groceries after work one evening. Nothing crazy. Just basic stuff. Milk, eggs, bread, and a frozen pizza I planned to eat the next night. I put everything in the fridge and freezer, then went to bed. The next evening after work, I opened the freezer. The pizza was gone. At first I thought maybe I had accidentally left it at the store, but I distinctly remembered putting it in the freezer, so I figured I must have misremembered. Not a big deal. 2 days later it happened again. This time it was leftovers. I had ordered takeout from a local Thai place and saved half for lunch the next day. When I opened the fridge that morning, the container was empty. Not just empty, clean. Like someone had rinsed it and put it back. Now I was confused. There was only one other person in the apartment, so I decided to ask Matt. That night when he came home, I casually brought it up. "Hey, quick question," I said. "Yeah. Did you happen to eat some leftovers from the fridge?" He looked surprised. "Oh, that was yours?" I stared at him. "Yes." He laughed awkwardly. "My bad, man. I thought it was mine." Now normally that would have been fine. Mistakes happen, so I shrugged. "No worries. Just ask next time." "Yeah, of course," he said. And that should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. Over the next couple of weeks, my groceries kept disappearing. Yogurt, sandwich meat, snacks. Even a 6-pack of drinks I bought for the weekend. Every time something vanished, Matt had the same excuse. "Oh, I thought it was mine." Now I'm a pretty patient person. But after the 5th or 6th time it started getting ridiculous. Because there was one big problem with his excuse. Matt barely bought groceries. His side of the fridge was almost always empty. Maybe a bottle of ketchup. Sometimes a half-empty takeout container. Meanwhile my shelves were full. Which meant that whenever he said I thought it was mine, it didn't really make sense. Still, I tried to handle it politely. One night I said, "Hey man, I think there's been some confusion about the food situation." "Yeah? I'm cool with sharing sometimes, but could you ask before taking stuff?" "Of course," he said immediately. "No problem." Again, that statement did not age well. The very next week I bought groceries for meal prep. Chicken, rice, vegetables, protein bars. All the stuff I planned to eat during the week. On Monday, I cooked everything and portioned it into containers. 5 meals for the work week. I put them neatly in the fridge. Tuesday evening I came home and opened the fridge. 2 containers were gone. Gone, not moved. Not hidden, just gone. At this point I knew exactly what was happening. So when Matt walked into the kitchen later that night, I asked him directly, "Did you eat my meal prep?" He paused. "Which one?" I blinked. "Any of them." He scratched the back of his neck. "Yeah, I grabbed one earlier. I was starving." "Matt, what?" "That was my food for the week." "I'll replace it," he said casually. But he never did. That was the moment I realized something important. Matt wasn't accidentally eating my food. He knew exactly what he was doing. He just didn't care. Because every time he took something, the worst consequence was a slightly awkward conversation. And then life went on. So in his mind it wasn't a big deal. Now I could have gone a few different directions here. I could have bought a mini fridge for my room. I could have labeled everything. I could have started locking food away. But honestly, none of those solutions addressed the real problem. Matt needed to learn that stealing food had consequences. Real consequences. So instead of arguing with him again, I decided to do something else, something much more effective. If Matt wanted to keep eating my food so badly, I was going to make sure he got exactly what he deserved. And the best part? He was going to eat it voluntarily. After Matt ate 2 of my meal prep containers, I stopped confronting him. That surprised him. Usually when he took something, I'd at least mention it. But this time I said nothing. No awkward conversation, no annoyed comment, nothing at all. Matt probably thought I had given up. In reality, I was just planning. The key to dealing with someone like Matt is understanding how they think. Matt wasn't malicious in the traditional sense. He wasn't trying to hurt me, he was just incredibly selfish. Something was convenient for him, he took it. And if the consequences were small, he didn't care. So yelling at him wasn't going to change anything. But consequences? Those work. A few days later, I went grocery shopping again. And this time I bought something special. Actually, several things. I bought the spiciest hot sauce I could find. Ghost pepper flakes. Extremely bitter cooking chocolate. And a few other ingredients. Then I started cooking. Now to be clear, I like spicy food. But what I was about to make wasn't normal spicy. It was punishment spicy. The kind of spicy that makes you question your life choices. I made a big batch of food. Rice bowls, chicken wraps, pasta containers. They looked completely normal. Smelled normal too. But inside? Absolute chaos. Ghost pepper flakes. Hot sauce mixed directly into sauces. Tiny bits of extremely bitter chocolate melted into a few things just to make the flavor weird. Nothing dangerous. Just absolutely horrible to eat. Then I placed everything neatly in the fridge, right where Matt could see it. And then I waited. It didn't take long. The next evening I came home from work and walked into the apartment. The kitchen was empty, but Matt's bedroom door was closed. I didn't think much of it, until about 10 minutes later. Suddenly I heard coughing. Not normal coughing. Aggressive coughing. The kind where someone is struggling to breathe. Then I heard the bathroom door slam, followed by the sound of the sink running, and a lot of swearing. A few minutes later, Matt came out of the bathroom. His face was red. His eyes were watering. He looked like he had just survived a chemical attack. When he saw me sitting on the couch, he froze. "You okay?" I asked calmly. "What the hell was in that food?" he said. I tilted my head. "What food?" "The chicken bowl in the fridge." "Oh," I said. "Yeah, that one's pretty spicy." "Pretty spicy?" he said. "Dude, that's insane." I shrugged. I like spicy food. Matt stared at me. He clearly wanted to say something else, but he couldn't, because admitting he ate it meant admitting he stole it. So instead he just grumbled and walked back to his room. I almost laughed, but the best part was, that was only the beginning. The next morning I checked the fridge. Another container was gone. Apparently Matt hadn't learned his lesson. That evening I heard the same thing. Coughing, swearing, bathroom sink running. At one point one heard him say, "Why is it all spicy?" I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. Over the next few days, the pattern continued. Matt kept stealing food, and every time he suffered. Sometimes it was the ghost pepper, sometimes it was the weird bitter flavor. Once he apparently grabbed one of the wraps on his way out to work, because about 30 minutes later he texted me. "Did you change your cooking?" I replied, trying some new recipes. Eventually he confronted me directly. One night he walked into the kitchen while I was making dinner. "All right," he said. "What's going on?" "What do you mean?" "All your food is insane now." I shrugged. "I'm experimenting with flavors. Everything is spicy. I like spicy food." He stared at me suspiciously. Then he said something that almost made me laugh. "You know, someone else might eat that." I raised an eyebrow. "Then they probably shouldn't take food that isn't theirs." There was a long pause. Matt looked at the fridge, then back at me. Then he said quietly, "Fair." And that was the moment I knew the message had landed. But the real turning point happened a week later. I came home from work and opened the fridge. For the first time in months, all my food was still there. Nothing missing. Nothing touched. Matt had finally stopped. Later that evening, he walked into the kitchen while I was cooking. He hesitated for a second. Then he said, "Hey, sorry about the food thing." I looked up. "That stuff you made last week destroyed me." I laughed. "Yeah, I noticed." He rubbed the back of his neck. I didn't realize how much I was taking. That was kind of the problem. Yeah, I get it now. And surprisingly, after that conversation, the problem never happened again. Matt started buying his own groceries. He even labeled a shelf in the fridge as his. And for the rest of the year we lived together, my food stayed exactly where I put it. Sometimes people don't change because you ask them to. Sometimes they change because they experience the consequences. Matt didn't care about my frustration, but he definitely cared about ghost pepper chicken. And honestly, it was the most peaceful roommate solution I've ever had.